The August Faction Incident, or the Second Arduous March. So, some background. So, Kim Il sung sent out preliminary signals in late 1955 and early 1956, before the Third Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea, or the WPK, that he was prepared to move against the Yuan and the Soviet factions. The 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was a bombshell with Nikita Khrushchev's secret speech, denouncing Joseph Stalin and the inauguration of de-Stalinization across the Soviet Union and the now Eastern Bloc. Throughout the Soviet bloc, domestic communist parties inaugurated campaigns against personality cults, and the general secretaries who tried or who modeled themselves after Stalin were deposed throughout Eastern Europe and the rest of the communist world, kind of. Now, Kim Il-sung was summoned to Moscow for 6 weeks in the summer of 1956 in order to receive a dressing down from Nikita Khrushchev, who wished to bring North Korea in line with the new orthodoxy of communism. During Kim Il-sung's absence, Pak Chung-ok, the new leader of the Soviet faction after the suicide of Ho Kei-ai, Chuk Kang-ik, and other leading members of the Yuan faction and opposition factions, devised a plan to attack Kim Il-sung at the next plenum of the Central Committee and criticize him for not correcting his leadership methods, developing a personality cult, distorting the Leninist principles of collective leadership, his distortions of socialist legality, i.e. using arbitrary arrests and executions, and other Khrushchev-era criticisms of Stalinism against Kim Il-sung's leadership. And I don't know, you want to bet how well this goes? Take a guess. The political struggle. Kim Il-sung became aware of the plan upon his return from Moscow and responded by delaying the plenum by almost a month. When the plenum finally opened on the 30th of August, Cho Kang-ik made a speech attacking Kim Il-sung for concentrating the power of the party and the state in his own hands, as well as criticizing the party line on industrialization, which ignored the widespread starvation among the North Korean people. Yong Kong-hum attacked Kim Il-sung for creating a police regime. Kim Il-sung's supporters heckled and berated the speakers, rendering them almost inaudible and destroying their ability to persuade the members. Not that they would want to persuade the members in front of the Stalinist guy right in front of them, right? Kim Il-sung's supporters accused the opposition of being anti-party and moved to expel Yong Kong-hum from the party. Kim Il-sung in response neutralized the attacks on him by promising to inaugurate changes and moderate the regime. Promises that were obviously, and which were not obviously kept. The majority of the committee voted to support Kim Il-sung and also voted in favor of repressing the opposition, expelling Cho and Pak from the Central Committee. Wait, isn't Cho Pak Ik? Anyway. A few leaders of the Yuan faction fled to China, as the Yuan faction were a Maoist faction, to escape the purges that followed the August plenum, and of course the Soviet factions did the same for the USSR. While supporters of the Soviet faction and the Yuan faction were obviously rounded up and purged, that did stay though. Though Kim Tong-bong, the leader of the Yuan faction and nominal chairman of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly, was not directly involved in the attempt on Kim Il-sung, he was ultimately purged in 1958, accused of being the mastermind of the plot. Kim Tong-bong disappeared after his removal from power and was likely either executed or died in prison from execution. In September 1956, a joint Soviet-Chinese delegation went to Pyongyang to instruct Kim Il-sung to cease any purges and reinstate the leaders of the Yuan and the Soviet factions. A second plenum of the Central Committee held on the 23rd of September 1956, and, well, I don't remember because the song is not out yet, officially pardoned the leaders of the August opposition attempts and rehabilitated them. But in 1957, the purges resumed and actually accelerated, and by 1958, the Yuan faction had ceased to actually exist. Members of the Soviet faction, meanwhile, facing increasing harassment and kind of fed up that they were kind of being purged, decided to return to the Soviet Union in increasing numbers. By 1959, the purges had become so ravenous that more than a quarter of the seats of the Supreme People's Assembly were vacant. A special by-election had to be organized in July of that year just to maintain legitimacy and get seats. By 1961, the only faction left was Kim Il-sung's own guerrilla faction, along with members who had joined the WPK under Kim Il-sung's leadership and were loyal to him. In the 1961 Central Committee, there were only 2 members of the Soviet faction, 3 members of the Yuan faction, and 3 members of the domestic faction, left out of a total of a Central Committee membership of 68. Could have been 69, but not so nice actually. These individuals were personally loyal to Kim Il-sung and were trusted by him. However, by the late 1960s, even these individuals were almost all purged. One likely reason for the failure of the Soviet and Yuan factions to depose Kim Il-sung was the nationalist view by younger members of the party who had joined since the late 1950s, that members of these factions were actually foreigners, influenced by alien powers, while Kim Il-sung was seen as a true Korean for the true Korean people. Now, with that being said, Kim Il-sung was actually born in North Korea, well, what you would call North Korea, but actually he spent most of his time in the Soviet Union because, well, you know, at the time the Japanese weren't too thrilled to have communists in Korea, which was a protectorate or, well, colony of Japan at that time. So, yeah, Kim Il-sung's family ran to the Soviet Union when it was a communist state, pretty much. And with that, he did spend a lot of time in the Soviet Union. Actually, a fun fact is that he spent so much time there that upon returning to, well, what would be called North Korea now, he couldn't actually speak Korean. That's how long he stayed in the Soviet Union for. And his mother and father couldn't really speak Korean in a Russian-dominated state, right? So, yeah, can't really be bilingual out there. But anyway, with that being said, we got one last paragraph though. According to Kim Il-sung's biographer, Dae Sok-so, Kim Il-sung's long struggle to consolidate power was complete. There were no longer any factions to challenge his position, and for the first time, no foreign armed forces were occupying the North. And with that being said, that is the August incident, or the purging of the opposition and making Kim Il-sung the uncontested supreme leader, well, even today, because it's technically a necrotocracy in North Korea where he's still kind of the leader, and his sons are just like his vessels on Earth, so yeah, it goes pretty weird. But with that being said, please don't arrest me, please don't send me to jail, and with that being said, hope you learned something. And enjoy, yeah, first full left video. With that being said, pretty interesting that this is pretty much how North Korea kind of got on its path to becoming a totalitarian necrotocracy dictatorship thing. But North Korea was actually pretty pleasantly well off in the Cold War because of subsidies, and it did had a higher life expectancy being closer to China and the Soviet Union. While there wasn't really no allies for the South Koreans, but South Korea did kind of return and reverse its fortunes in the 1980s, becoming a economic East Asian tiger. Well, North Korea kind of went down when the Soviet Union went down, so classic going down with the ship scenario. So with that being said, yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and I'm not gonna get this video to 10 minutes, but we're just gonna get close enough. I do think I have to edit out like 1 or 2 things either, so not 10 minutes, won't even be 10 minutes, so yeah, with that being said, glad to be back, glad to be back, and with that being said, let's keep it cool, new video should come out probably, want to do one tomorrow? Sure, why not? Yeah, let's do one tomorrow. Anyway, with that being said, learn something, enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.